And welcome to the Barry Foster Show on YouTube, originating from the Ridge Flora Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. I'd like to remind you that if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for the program, just drop us a line at the Barry Foster Show at gmail.com. Check out our YouTube page at the Barry Foster Show, as we'll be putting up new programming on a regular basis, Monday through Friday, regular weekday basis. I take the weekends off to go places. And please subscribe to our YouTube page and join our pages at the Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. And if you would like to be an advertiser, send me an email, thebarryfostershow at gmail.com, and we'll get you a rate card. And Ridge Florist is our original sponsor, but we have room for three more sponsors if you want to be on. John Larsen in the studios with us this morning. And
good morning,
John. I've heard some bad news. I know that you watch a lot of YouTubes, and it appears that Elon Musk has made a very big and very disturbing announcement.
Yes, it was last Thursday, because he puts one out just about every day, and so on. And I try to watch all of his because they're very informative. He's very soft-spoken. It's one-on-one, nobody else there, and he just sits and talks about whatever and so on. And he announced last week, Thursday, that he is going to leave the United States. And
Did he say why?
Yes, he repeated over and over and over, it's because I fear for the safety of my children. And I think, my personal opinion, I assume it was he had received and has for many, many months now, received death threats and other kinds of and physical. Look at what happened to his businesses. And I believe some of that then started to go after, his children. And I think that was a bridge too far.
I think it all started with he was a hero
Yes.
with the electric cars and everything.
Yes.
He was a hero for a while, but when he started Doge and beginning to look into what was going on in the government, he began fiddling with what appears to be a pipeline of tax dollars into the liberal Democrat lexicon, and that was too much. And his Doge guys started going in, and I think that the big thing that he did was the USAID thing, and it's amazing because as that money from USAID dried up, all of a sudden, Democrat Party funds have dried up. Other Democrat funds have dried up, and it looks like they pinched the head off the snake.
Yes, but he did say, I saw another podcast of his. He was on with Joe Rogan, and this was only about a week or so ago. And Rogan asked him, he said, okay, what did you see that really was way beyond what you ever expected when you were doing Doge? He said, government programs, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. He said, those three are so crooked with fraud, waste, and abuse. He said, you cannot believe. But the other thing he said was kind of interesting. Rogan asked him, he said, well, who bitches the most about what you found? He said, 90% of what we found, the waste, fraud, and abuse, is going to the Democrats. However, he said the 10% that went to the Republicans is the people that I got the most response from. He said they would rant and rail to me all day long, the 10% Republicans. So this fraud, waste, and abuse does go in both directions. However, a large part of it, a very large part of it, goes to the Democrats.
Yeah, somebody once said that Washington is a very dangerous town to play games in, especially when it involves cutting off people's money.
Oh, yes.
And Rogan had him on a couple months ago. And he was talking to him, and he asked him something about how this was being administrated and stuff. And he said, well, I can't talk. He said, you can't give us a hint. And Musk looks at him, and he's kind of see like when he wants to say something, he goes, you're trying to get me killed, aren't you? And I think he fears for his life.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, let's face it. If you have people coming after you that are very graphic in what they're saying, as far as, what you're doing against what they want, yes, absolutely. And I believe, like I said earlier, I believe that harassment and that threats and all of that then reached not beyond just him, but beyond him to his family. And when that happened, that's where I think he said, that's enough. I'm done.
There's some smart people around, and they will, what they call dox you, which is, they'll give you their name and address, their phone numbers, and they kind of make your life hell because then they have all these useful idiots that'll call you up at all times of the day. And then I used to, when I had a landline, I would get those calls. I got one day it was like 4:00 in the morning. I was going to work, and some drunk kid called me up and was threatening me. And okay, fine, I wasn't really. He was some drunk kid. I wasn't really that worried, and apparently my phone number was not that difficult to find. But some of these other people will go out and they will kill you, or at least try to kill you, and be a hero. I mean, look at Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
Yes. And so you look at these people, and I understand why. And they don't go after you; they go after your kids.
Well,
And there's a movie, I think it's called Witness. At any rate, this guy is talking to this woman, and they're driving down the road, and there's her kid on a bike, and he's getting closer and closer with the car, and he's edging over like he's going to hit the kid, and the woman's screaming, that's her little boy, And then he pulls around and goes around the kid. He goes, it'd be terrible. We'd all be so sad if he got hit by a car. Wouldn't that be a terrible thing? We'd all be so sad. We'd try to help you out any way we could. The message was pretty plain.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard it by other administrations called the Chicago way. But that's I feel Elon Musk, fortunately, is the kind of guy that no matter where he is on the face of the earth, he can get stuff done. He doesn't have to be in the United States to get stuff done.
No, I mean, let's face it, everything his world probably revolves around technology we can't even think about, let alone use.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, he has ways of getting things done, from any part in the world. And you're right, absolutely. He has the resources to do that. He has the people to do that, and he has the ability to do that. And I think those things what has made him successful. But the fact that he feels he has to leave this country, that's a scary thing.
It is.
That's a scary thing.
And he's and they've tried. Look at all the stuff they did to Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
They deplatformed him. They tried to take him off the ballot. They tried to take away his funds. They went after him. I read a thing that said Jack Smith had issued 172 subpoenas trying to find something that they could prosecute him for. They tried to keep him in court during the elections so he wouldn't have the ability to campaign. He's had pot shots taken at him at least twice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know pot shots taken at him once, but they caught another guy who was going to shoot at him.
Yep.
Lord knows how many. We were at one of his rallies in Ocala,
mm-hmm.
and there was a Secret Service agent back there, and it was really hot. We were sitting under the bleachers. We could hear him. We didn't get a chance to see him. We were up on the media platform, and they threw us off because we didn't have a big camera. But at any rate, so we were sitting back there, and we said, does he get threats? Every day.
Oh, yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
And so Musk, because he's helping him, these people are relentless, and they will, if they can't, and we talked about this yesterday, if they can't get information, they will make it up. All right. And by the way, Doge is still underway. The last number that I wrote, Doge savings, $214 billion, which figures out to about $1,300 per taxpayer.
Yeah, and like he said in this interview with Joe Rogan, he says, we haven't really scratched the surface on fraud, waste, and abuse. He said it's there. We know it's there. We can see it. He said, how can anybody look in Social Security? And he said, there are people on Social Security that haven't even been born yet.
Yes.
Haven't even been born, and they're collecting Social Security. And then you've got all these people that supposedly are 124 years old.
150.
What lame brain that sits in front of the computer that generates the checks or the deposit slips that goes out to Mrs. Smith, and it says that Mrs. Smith is 120 years old and you don't do anything?
It's not their money. They don't care.
I know, but I mean, it dumbfounds me that could be happening.
John, Doge is the first real, honest to goodness, living, breathing oversight group that I ever remember being able to go into government. Because as we've talked about earlier, there are a lot of big, powerful people in both parties that don't want you looking into this. Now, I remember there was a senator his name will come to me, William Proxmire. William Proxmire had the Golden Fleece Awards. And I remember the one that I remember because they made fun of it on Laughing. And I was just a kid. And this is back when millions of dollars was a lot of money, not billions or trillions. Okay. But, they were given millions of dollars for a study into the sex life of a tsetse fly. Okay. And they all thought it was stupid and funny. Why would they fund it? They didn't realize it was a kickback scheme. They didn't realize that the tsetse fly didn't see very much of that. They didn't see very much of that money at all. Now, the university that was doing the study, they saw a lot of money. And the people who were doing the study saw a fairly good-sized chunk of money. But a lot of that went back in campaign donations and other donations to a political candidate or a sitting senator, congressman, whatever. You know, it made the big circle of life. Well, we didn't know that part. That was back when everything was run by ABC, NBC, and CBS. And there was a few trace element UHF stations off in the distance, but they just made their money showing old movies and cowboy flicks and stuff. But at any rate, so now we know what's going on, and Doge has uncovered this stuff, and the new people that are running this, we don't know who they are, and I think that they're very happy. They don't want to know who they are, you know, because they are just as afraid as Elon Musk as being on the front lines, and bad things could happen to them. And the guy who called himself, all due respect, Big Balls, he got the living snot beat out of him.
Yes, he did, and it was a very serious beating. And the only good saving grace in that, the locals wanted to release the guys that did it out on bail or whatever, just let them go. But then the feds stepped in because, you know, I guess the feds, if there's any connection between the person or the business or the building that's being used for public, whatever, government use, the feds can step in and charge a person beyond what the locals will do or won't do, and so on. So this has happened in a number of cases lately where the locals have want to slap somebody on the wrist for doing something horrible, but it involves some government, whatever situation. The feds can step in and say, no, we're not going to arrest you on a federal charge. Different story, different court system, different people, and so on. So that's the other thing that the Trump administration is doing in a number of cases, is charging people on federal crimes going beyond the so-called local decisions.
And I'm glad to see that they're able to hold people to account. And I'll tell you that here on the local level, I just do want to talk about this a little bit, is that there are people who are making charges and saying things that have like zero basis in fact that are not being held to account. And we talk about this a little bit about the paid protesters when we were talking about yesterday about the paid protesters and people who you would think were all in, but they're just in it for the paycheck, you know. And we've seen some of these guys that go in and this is a great term I'm going to start using. It says I'm an independent reporter. I'm an independent broadcaster, and so they go in to do these. And when they try to interview people, there's one woman they call the kazoo lady. And when he's trying to interview somebody, she starts playing the kazoo with an arrow going, you know, right-wing troll. And, you know, a lot of times these guys they'll let them say whatever they want to say, and they don't argue with them. You know, sometimes I'll ask them a hard question about the answer, but they're not really representing right-wing, but they don't want you talking to anybody that's not approved by them. They want to limit your discussion. But I went last Thursday night, I went to a special meeting for the Avon Park City Council talking about how they were going to hire a new city manager. And John, I have been going to municipal meetings for 50 years, and I have never, ever been at a more boisterous, more unhinged, and more uncontrolled meeting than that meeting there. Okay, I saw one meeting in Eagle Lake once upon a time where these two council members, one was a man, one was a woman, and they got mad. And she stood up, then he stood up, and it looked like they were going to maybe come to blows. But they were on the opposite sides of the dais. They couldn't really get at each other where they were. It would have been inconvenient to get around. And the mayor had a gavel. He's banging the gavel. He's, ladies and gentlemen, please, please. The media is present. I had made it a point. I wanted to go to every, and Eagle Lake at that time was a very boisterous kind of a place. So I wanted to go and see for myself. So I sit in the back of the room with my notebook, taking notes. This is back when I worked in Polk County. Anyway, but this meeting, there were people shouting. There were people talking. And now the mayor is kind of on the same order as Donald Trump. They hate him as much as the left hates Donald Trump. And anything he does will just make it worse. I would have said to Mayor Anderson, I said, Mayor, next meeting, I would tell him, say, look, here's the deal. We're all going to be quiet. We're all going to show decorum. You want to come up and speak, okay? You fill out a form. You come to the podium and you speak, and you get your 3 minutes, 5 minutes, however long. They've got a big timer in the front, and then you're done. And if you can't be quiet, we have the law enforcement here. We have the Highlands County Sheriff's Office. We will have you removed.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yep.
We will have you absolutely. That's me. I banged myself. I'm sorry, but we will have you removed from. We'll have you removed from the meeting, okay? And that's what I would tell him. Mm-hmm. But if he did that, they would just all go crazy. Mm-hmm. But that's what I would do, because you have to have some level of decorum in there.
Yes.
And Jim Barnard was going to make a motion, and somebody was screaming over top of him, "Don't you dare! Don't you dare!" Well, let him dare. Mm-hmm. His motion didn't pass,
right?
But he was gonna say, "Look, if the city manager doesn't want to be here, I move that we just let her go by the end of the week," which would have been the next day, would have been Friday. Mm-hmm. And they were, "Don't you dare!" And there has been a social media. There's been a social media attack, which has included myself. One of my friends who was a former city official here, by a fake person with a fake ID, who has been putting up absolutely false information and does not apparently know anything about what's going on, but they don't care, because they figure that, just like the Democrats figure that their true believers won't research anything that they're doing, they don't think that the people of Avon Park is going to look into this. And I got to tell you, I felt so bad for David Flowers. I came in, and they have this church table, a 6 foot, I call it a church table, 6 foot table sitting there, and it was right up against the wall, and you could only sit at the very end, which is about 3 foot wide maybe, and the reporter for the News Sun was sitting there. So I walked up to the mayor, and I said, "Mayor Anderson," he goes, "Yes, how can I help you?" I said, can we pull that table out from the wall?" He goes, "Yeah, sure." So we were sitting in a place that in the past we weren't allowed to sit because they were afraid the TV might fall on us. So we pulled it out about 3 feet, about enough for me to shove this chair behind it, and so I could sit at the table. And I was right even with the podium. Now, you couldn't see me on camera, okay? But they wanted somebody to come in and be a city manager for a very short period of time until they could put a new city manager in. Mm-hmm. So Mayor Anderson knew, when they knew that they're going to have to replace the city manager, this is leadership. He started looking around. He said, "How are we going to deal with this problem?" He's like Trump, He says, "How are we going to deal with this problem?" And he says, "I'll tell you what, I've got a few people on a short list who will come in for this finite period of time and fill this spot until we find somebody new." He doesn't want the job for himself. Mm-hmm. A guy by the name of David Flowers, former sheriff's deputy, former Avon Park City councilman, former county commissioner, and former Avon Park City manager. He knows the community. He loves Avon Park. His dad, Mac Flowers, was a fire chief and a community founder of some renown. Mm-hmm. And they just beat him 7 ways. "Oh, he's Anderson's friend, blah, blah, blah." And finally, David comes up, and he was as close to tears as you can imagine, because I wasn't maybe 3 feet away from him. I've known David a long time. And he says, "Look," he says, "I'm not going to put up with that. What I put up with in 2019. He says, I withdraw. So they threw this guy out. They threw this guy under the bus. Why? Because Garrett Anderson had gone and looked for a guy who he thought could fill the gap temporarily. It's like it's Donald Trump could find a cure for cancer, and they'd be screaming about people having a right to have cancer. The same thing is true with Anderson. I mean, they are after, they want to take and nail his hide to the wall, and his sister too, probably.
Now, what is I know what I read in the paper, but sometimes stories don't tell the whole tale.
Yeah.
What were the real reasons why? What's her name? Kelly? The one city manager that.
Oh yeah, Danielle Kelly, doctor.
Okay,
Danielle
is
Kelly.
leaving, and
Yes.
she's only been there. I don't even think she's been there a year.
Less than a year, I think. Less than a year. And her announced, this is what she has said, and she won't say much. And apparently, she's a former Marine, so semper fi. Anyway, she said she could no longer align herself with the leadership of Avon Park. And then later in the meeting, she says, I have no problem with the employees or the people of Avon Park. And it appeared to me and I've been watching this these different councils since 1986. Okay. And it appeared to me that Barnard took exception to that. Okay. Barnard took exception and said, well, if she don't want to be here, let her go. We don't, and you and I both know there are employees that give their 2 weeks notice, and the boss comes in and says, let's not wait 2 weeks.
Right.
Clean out your desk, and you can go, and we'll give you your severance check and live long and prosper. Okay, and which is what Barnard tried to do.
Yep.
But they had people. I expected them to be yelling, "Give us Barabbas" from the back of the room. I mean, they were all wound up screaming, and I thought to myself, and if Anderson had banged the gavel, they would have screamed that much more. Now, I saw a meeting that's very much like this back in the early 2000s in Avon Park. They were going to rename a lot of the streets because this 911 review said there was too many streets that had the same name, blah, blah, blah. So they went change, and so they started changing the name of streets after people.
Okay.
And the meeting was devolving into chaos. And Tom Macklin was the mayor at the time. And he banged his gavel. He says, look, we can't, this is not going to, he said, he told staff, you go ahead and talk to these people. Bang, bang, bang. He adjourned the meeting. He said, I'm not, and nobody argued with him. Okay. He said, we're not going to have this kind of chaos. But it was that kind of chaos. Okay. And it appears to me, if I was looking from the outside, that these people are trying to poison the water. Because if you watch that meeting, no one in their right mind would want to be a city manager here. It appears to me that somebody may possibly have somebody in the wings waiting to come in. Because what does government do? They create a terrible problem until the citizens finally say, just do anything, fix it. Just do anything, fix it. So they take away your rights, and then they bring in their own people. And it appears to me that there may be somebody in abeyance here, but they don't have the votes. They need 3 votes, and they've only got 2. I mean, I can count the votes too. I mean, I've done this a long time. So, but it appears to me now they're trying to try these people in the court of public opinion, and they had an ethics commission investigation, and the ethics commission apparently found some stuff they didn't like, but apparently it did not rise to the level of being prosecuted because they decided not to prosecute it. Then they went to the county. They went to the county. And do I have those letters with me? They went to here. They went to the county and went after the county building department and said that they'd done something wrong. Well, the sheriff's Blackman's office investigated that and said, no, we can't find anything wrong. So then they went and got this law firm, this Gilchrist law firm. And the story that I get was that the Gilchrist law firm was already presented with 4,000 pages of documentation before they even started their investigation. Okay. And so they took the results of the Gilchrist law firm and sent it up. The motion was to send it to the governor's office, but apparently it went more places than just the governor's office. But the the Office of the Attorney General, the AG, James Youthmeyer, a girl by the name of Melody Hadley, who's the chief of ethics for the Florida Attorney General's office, sent a letter I'm writing in response to the communications of the Office of the Attorney General. The bottom line is, the next to last paragraph says, if you feel that a violation of Florida Ethics Code has occurred, you may file a complaint with the Florida Commission on Ethics, which they already did.
Sure.
Okay?
Yep.
And then she says, please visit the Commission's website of ethics.state.florida.us for further information, signed Melody Hadley. So that didn't work. So then, apparently, the division of the Department of Business and Public Professional Regulation, the DBPR, the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, they got one. And Mark Geyer, who is an investigation specialist in the Division of Real Estate Enforcement with the Division of Business and Professional Regulation, who said, Ms. Kelly, we have received your complaint against the above-named subject. Based on the complaint and the supporting documentation submitted, there is not sufficient evidence to prove that the subject you identified in your complaint committed a violation of the Florida real estate license law. And it says the DRE is legislatively restricted from acting as a court and therefore cannot intercede or advocate for one party or the other in civil disputes. I cannot interpret legal documents or enforce contracts and cannot recover money. Then it goes on from there. Both of these are dated October 15th. When they had the meeting on October 30th, they'd had these letters for 2 weeks. So I think, in my personal opinion, it appears to me that the people who don't like the mayor and his sister knew this. And that's why they were so mad, because they had now sent this off to, in fact, one of the, I'm going to be as gentle as I can, but I'm going to quote this guy. This guy comes up from Fort Myers. I don't know who he is, but he said, you already received your letters. He had an adjective in there that I'm not going to use. You already received your letters from the DBPR and the Attorney General's office. He basically his remarks were, you received letters telling you to take a hike, okay, that they couldn't do anything.
Right.
And so I don't understand what this is all about. And they spent $80,000 on this attorney, and they went to Shelley McCure, who, by the way, is the first municipal official that I ever knew to swear on the dais. She dropped the S-bomb, and I was astonished because, number one, I was expected a guy to do it. just saying, men are less couth. But anyway, but she said she was prepared to spend as much money as it took, and I said, take for what? Well, if you go back to the last special meeting they had, somebody yelled at Garrett Anderson, how long is this going to go on? And he said, until they get the answer they want. So they have been after the mayor and his sister the same way that these detractors have been after Trump, and it's been astonishing to me. But and the fact that they have this fake individual has wanted to debate me in public, but I don't debate anonymous people and fake people. If you want to come out and say who you are, I mean, for 30 years plus, I signed my opinion every day. It was the Barry Foster show. It was my show, and I talked and I gave my opinion. And if you didn't like my opinion, call me up and we'll have discussion. We'll have a back and forth. But but for some fake person, and we used to get fake. There used to be this a fake guy who would write into the newspaper, and we told Ramona that we couldn't find this guy. The address that he gave was not his address, but he didn't live there. And I said we encourage. He was a very rabid Democrat. He wasn't a socialist, but he was a radical, rabid Democrat. And she would publish his letters anyway, or the letters that this person wrote under that name. But if you have the courage of your convictions to give your actual name, heck with you. You know?
I had a letter to the editor in the paper Saturday, and I
Yeah.
always put my name.
Yeah.
Always. And I'm not afraid to put my name down there because I've done some research before I put the thing together. And so I use my research and I report on my research. So it's not my numbers. It's not my dates. It's not my names. It's the research that I've done.
Well,
That's where it comes from.
Cameron Long, the outgoing Chamber of Commerce executive director, said this, and I was at the new Charlie Faye's restaurant, and they have a great breakfast, by the way. Went to Charlie Faye's, and an individual that I've known for a long time was in the booth behind me, and said, "Hey, Barry," and I said, "No, how you doing?" And you recommend, and I did recognize her, and I told her I recognized her, and her husband is just retired, and anyway, she said, "What do you think is going on in Avon Park?" And I said, I think Avon Park is on an upswing, and she gave me a very quizzical look. I said, "Look. The new poorhouse has just opened up. There's a new gift shop going in beside that. The building beside the Brickell building, the Fern and Fern building, is getting ready to get emptied out and renovated. Charlie Faye's has just opened up. I mean, the baseball museum is all but completed, and they're going to have an opening there. The Main Street program is going to have this second Friday night of each month. They're going to have an event. This one's Hometown Hangout, I think is what she calls it. But anyway, there's all these things going on. Mm-hmm. I think that the city of Charm is poised to economically start to come back together, and all of this political stuff notwithstanding, it seems like that despite all of that, Avon Park's coming back together. And I think that just as the Democrats have position themselves against the police, against economic development, against anything that's good, and anything. Their platform seems to be anything Trump is for, we're against. Yeah. That's pretty much their platform. Yep. So it seems like anything that Garrett Anderson is for, we're against. And so as this and Kamala said, you couldn't do this at a worse time. And again. They had one of the Tampa TV stations came out, and they only come when something bad happens. I remember one time, maybe I've told this story. I pulled up, and there was a guy sitting in one of their TV vans, and he had his little sport coat on, and I walked up there, and I said, "Who died?" I said, "Sir?" I said, "Who died?" "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you guys never show up until somebody dies, some bad thing is going to happen. Oh, it's about the city council." I said, "Why don't you come when something good happens?" Mm-hmm. So as I pulled in this time, I was not late, but I wasn't early like I normally am. And there were these two guys in street clothes pulling this little camera out of the back of this beat up car, and I thought, what the heck is this? And people asked me what TV station was it? I said, I think it was an independent broadcaster because they didn't have any flag on the mic. You know how on the mic it usually says your WBFS, whatever. They didn't have any of that, and so they were pulling this out, and they were the two of them. The one kid, big tall kid with shorts, and his shirt was out, and had a man bun, and the other guy was a 30-ish, maybe 40s kid he just had like I have on today, just a cotton shirt and long pants, and they were pulling this stuff out, and they were set up in the back of the room. They taped the whole meeting, and then at the end I saw they had little spotlights set up, and Shelley McCure was standing there waiting to do her stand up, and somebody sent me a video of this, and it just looks as horrible as it possibly could look. And so it just seems to me that if you wanted to have a reason not to come here and not to set up business, they couldn't have had bad advertising than that.
Yeah, that's really, it goes back to what we talked about, I think, last week. And that was that it seems like unless there's turmoil in Avon Park is asleep, because there just seems to be turmoil of one kind or another in the city. And it's been that I've been here 20 years and it's been that way ever since I've been here. And I just keep shaking my head. I'm saying, there seems to be some good things happening up there, but there still seems to be nothing but anger, frustration, and whatever going on constantly.
Well, since I came in 1986, and I came right at the end of what Jane Lou Buck used to refer to as the Hat Gang. Mm-hmm. 3 guys whose initials formed the word HAT, okay? But after the Hat Gang, there was the group of 4, and there were all these power plays as to who was going to be in charge. In fact, there was one of the city council women who was elected for a very short period of time. I asked her, did it itch when this other councilman ran his hand up and back and made her lips move like that, like she was a ventriloquist dummy? And I said, and people were complaining, and I went to the mayor. I said, the way the roll is called, when a certain council individual would vote, the rest would figure out how they should go along. And I said, if you want to change this, all you have to do is change the first person you call on and just go on a rotating basis. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go necessarily in alphabetical order, reverse alphabetical order, the way they're seated, or any. You don't have to call it the same way all the time.
Sure.
And when I suggested that, there was wailing and gnashing of, "Oh, we couldn't do that. That would be a horrible thing to do," because they wouldn't know how to vote. And one time there was a motion on they asked if this councilman was going to make a motion. And this back when they had 7 members on the council. And the councilman looked up and he says, "I can count votes, Mr. Chairman." So he already knew that he wasn't going to win. So he didn't do the motion. But there was a council member there who, out of spite, if they didn't get everything they wanted in the budget, they would vote against the budget. And if the budget was not approved unanimously, somebody had to read it. They had to read the whole thing. And so he would make them read the whole budget. And they dumped it off on the attorney, which I thought was an expensive way to go. But they dumped it on the attorney, who would sit there and for hours would be reading this budget. Okay? Just that was punishment for not doing what they wanted him to do.
Unbelievable. I don't know. It just seems like they could get so much more done if they would just put all the frustration that they've got behind them and say, let's work together as a team for the betterment of Avon Park.
Yeah, and we'll do it as long as I'm in charge. Yeah. Now, if you put me in charge, now if I'm the big dog and I can tell everybody else what to do, why, this city will calm right down.
Now, do you think that this Miss Kelly's frustration, whatever, is with the mayor? Is that where it is, or is it with other folks, or the whole group put together?
It would appear to me. Now, I don't want to put words in her mouth. I don't know.
I
she said, here's what I know. She said she could not align herself with the leadership. And there appears to be 3 members of the council who agree on most everything. Not everything, but most everything. Okay? And 2 members of the council who don't agree on most everything. And there's a lot of 3-2, 4-1 votes in the council. So, and I don't know what happens in City Hall that's not during the meetings. I don't know whether anybody at City Hall gets calls from a council member saying, "I want you to do this," because no one council member, not even the mayor, other than setting the agenda, can call the city manager and say, "Do this." It takes at least 3 votes in a city council meeting to tell the city manager to do something.
Now, are there term limits on the council and or the mayor?
No. Yes. There are. You can serve up to 3 4-year terms.
Okay.
And what happened was they used to serve 3-year terms, and there was many years when that would require a special election. And so it was during Mayor Anderson's tour. He said, "Look, here's what I want to do." I said, let's make these 4-year terms instead of 3-year terms. Okay, it'll be 4-year terms instead of 3-year terms. We'll term limit them to 3 4-year terms. Okay. And one of the council members was very unhappy, and she said that she probably wouldn't have run for office if she knew she was going to be term limited. I think 12 years is a good long run.
Yes.
That's personally, you know. But at any rate, so and it would only take effect as each one of them got elected.
Okay.
But they wanted the council elections to sync up with the general and the off-year elections, the presidential and the gubernatorial. They wanted to sync up so they didn't have to hold a special election and do all this special stuff.
Right.
So that's what they did. And I think Mayor Anderson is eligible, and it's 12 years total. It's not like 12 years in a row and you can sit out and run for another 12. It's 12 years total.
Right.
So
years,
if he sits out one term and comes back, he only gets 12. And he's allowed one more 4-year term, I think is the way it works.
Now, are they paid positions?
Yes.
All of them?
Yes.
Okay.
They don't get paid a lot.
No.
And they get what they call per diem. Like if you're going to go to the Florida League of Cities meeting as a representative of City of Avon Park, then you get mileage up there. You get your dinner. If it's a banquet, they'll buy your tickets and that kind of stuff. Okay, but you better have a day job if you're going to be a city council member. Okay, I don't know how much they get paid, but they don't get paid much. You know,
or a retired person.
Or retired. If you're getting a good whack. You know, you can go, and I think that's what the founders had in mind for most elected people. In fact, if you go back to the original, as Charlie Cook pointed out, you go back to the original states. A lot of people, you had to be a Christian to run. You know, you had to be a Christian in good standing to run. It wasn't in the federal documents, but the original United States was a confederation of states. That here comes the truth train. We've been waiting for. So at least they're running today. But it was a confederation of states which agreed on most things, and they had a universal currency, and they had some interstate commerce people. But it was and so the states really had all the power. Up until Lincoln, the president had a very small amount of power.
Also, there were a number of states that had a specific religion for that state.
Yes.
Okay, Pennsylvania had one. I mean, most of the states had a defined religion. It wasn't, I don't think it was enforced, but it was a defined religion for that state, and so on. So that was something in today's world. Oh my God, you could never even breathe that, let alone have it.
Well, they have taken a private letter by Jefferson about a wall and the wall of separation he's talking about is the government can't start a religion.
Right.
Okay. But all the founders were Christians of some.
Well, some, I think wasn't Benjamin Franklin. I think he was an atheist, wasn't he?
I don't know.
Agnostic. I mean, he was not as religious as the rest.
He was not a churchgoer.
No.
Okay. But he was really offset by the other founders who really. Washington's prayer life was legendary. You know, I mean, of the 7 statues of him in Washington, 4 of them show him in prayer. Yeah. And by the way, I hear they're starting to put some of these statues back up.
Yes, they are resurrecting some that they had put in storage, the ones that didn't get destroyed by the maniacs that were out there. And because most of these were historical figures of the founding of the country and so on, but they were so anti-American, anti-whatever that they decided that destruction was the better thing to do.
Well, it seems that they have been tamped down to a degree. You're not seeing the same kind of riots you saw before because they're not getting the same kind of support they had before.
Well, I'll tell you, if you watch, and I see a lot of it, but if you watch the arrests that are taking place in this country today, the arrests are massive for all kinds of things. A lot of it is drug related. Okay, huge enforcement of drugs. And I think Trump is, the thing that he said that many times, and that is that the drugs are the scourge of the earth as far as killing people in this country. We lose on drugs, we lose between 80 and 100,000 people a year.
Yeah, and they're hitting these fast boats full of
yeah.
drugs,
Yes.
and they're getting a little pushback. There has I saw an article that said that Trump has said, no, we're not going into Venezuela. Okay, we're not going in, but he says we will stop that from coming into the United States.
Well, they are talking now. They've got a lot of ships, Navy ships, including a carrier down in that area, part of the world. And so I think the force is there. And if Maduro, is that the leader?
Yes.
Maduro? If he retaliates in any way, I think he'll regret that day.
But, and I go back to about 90 years ago in America during the gangster time of America, where big gangs ran, different cities, it was
mafia.
Yeah, it was, they ran the big cities, and they were infiltrated in the police department and the
judges,
so that's the way Mexico seems to be now, that the big cartels, the drug cartels, are running things. And Donald Trump, I've heard rumors that there has been a move to maybe go after with drone strikes. Mm-hmm. And I did not realize that the Ukraine war is being fought mainly with drones.
Oh yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Ukraine's been on my back burner, but they had this thing where these trucks full of drones would drive into the Soviet Union and go way in, and all of a sudden the top would slide off the trailer, and like 400 drones would come out and wreak havoc, and then they'd be gone.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, Russia has the long-range missiles that they fire into Ukraine, but Ukraine doesn't have that type of artillery at this point, so they're using drones in a smaller fashion, but like a bunch of bumblebees. If you get enough stings, it's going to hurt. So they're flying into Russia. They're doing whatever they can do with drones that have, ammunition on board, and shoot it at the target or crash it, I guess, with the drone, however they make that happen. But I mean, it's interesting. Unfortunately, though, you don't hear from the Russian side. You never hear how bad it is as far as casualties,
and you won't.
Destruction.
You won't.
No, but in Ukraine, every time the Russians do that, it's visual. We see it. They film it.
Because they want the money.
Yes. And so, and again, and I can really understand Trump's frustration with Putin, because he has evidently decided that my goal in life is to kill Ukrainians and destroy their country. Even if I don't conquer that area or I don't end up with it, I'm going to inflict as much pain on the people and as much, other destruction as I can, which is very sad. And Trump, and he said this many times, and I believe it's true, he does not want to see people die in a battle. It's useless.
No.
That is a useless waste of humanity. And I think Trump is frustration because he sees 20 people killed, 30 people killed, 100 people killed. And that frustrates him that he can't stop that.
And he stopped apparently 7 wars. This guy was talking to him, talking to one of the protesters. He says, well, Trump has solved like 7 wars. Well, what wars? What wars has he solved? And the guy didn't answer him. He didn't say, India and Pakistan and Thailand and Cambodia. And there's like 7 of these where he's waded in there, and some of the African countries, and he's gone in. I don't have them I'm not Charlie Kirk. I can't do it off the top of my head. But anyway, he has done this because, again, I think, to be honest, Trump thinks war is bad for business, and he wants business to flourish.
Oh, yeah.
So he wants people to get along. In fact, I have a friend who went to Thailand. I said, well, the war's over there. I hear the war is over. He goes, oh, yeah. And it's interesting. A friend of mine who lives not too far from me on the one side of the house is in Thailand. My new neighbor is originally from Cambodia. He's an American citizen now, but he went from Cambodia to the Philippines to America. And I told him, I said, I'm going to have you and this other guy have a fist fight in my front lawn to solve the war between Thailand and Cambodia. He said, no, I don't think so. But at any rate, he has solved a lot of things. But anytime, and we talked about this yesterday, anytime something good happens with Trump, the mainstream media is silent.
Yes.
Yes.
And anything that Trump does, it's crickets. Nothing is mentioned about things that he'll do that are good for mankind or good for some, country or whatever. I mean, but he sincerely, I believe, has the desire not to see conflict. And that's why I think, yes, he throws out, messages to Argentina, Venezuela, whatever, about, we're going to come into your country if we have to, and we're going to bomb this, and we're going to take. Trump's not going to do that. He is not going to put ground forces into a country unless we're attacked first by that country. If we were attacked, then all bets are off.
Okay? And he has already gone in to try to unravel Arctic frost, which is, I've heard it described as the worst scandal since Watergate. Again, ignored by the mainstream media, but the FBI and DOJ was weaponized against every Republican House member, Senate member, against Trump. It is just, it's probably worse than Watergate. But it won't be until some arrests are started to be made that you're really going to see anything happen there. And they're going, again, Pam Bondi now, going after who was running the auto pen. And it's kind of the first domino will be if they pull these pardons and people are left without the presidential pardon to protect them, then you're really going to see it step up. But I realize it's 9 months since he was elected. Is it 9 months?
Well, he took office January 20th. Yeah. So here we are in
the 11th
November.
month. Yeah. Okay. So he's been in office 11 months, literally, and 10 months because October 20th was just a couple of weeks ago. At any rate, he has done so much, and so much is in the works to be done. He's moving at Trump speed.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, he's got so many. I mean, it's not on the status of the country when he took over was in deplorable shape. I mean, absolutely deplorable shape. Everything the Biden administration did in one way or another helped to destroy or stall or put in limbo anything that was good for this country. You take the mass immigration problem, and it's more than just bodies coming across the border. It's what has happened. Look at how many, I just talked about a little bit of how many of those people are on food stamps. So it's stolen from the American taxpayers many, many billions of dollars of fraud. And then you've got these governors and mayors that are sanctuary cities and states that have done even more. They've spent billions of dollars on feeding and housing the illegals. Why? We should have never had to do that.
It's the Cloward-Piven theory to overwhelm the government by taking as much government service as they can and making the American taxpayers pay it. And it is the government. It is using the government to overwhelm the system so that people will say, just solve it. We don't care what you do. Just solve the problem. It's the way the Patriot Act got passed. Whatever it takes. We'll just give you more power, and we'll resign ourselves. And the MAGA movement has come along and said, you know what? That's not what the Constitution says. And as the pendulum begins to swing back the other way, it's going to be our job, especially in this time of family get-togethers here in Florida. Now, it's in festival time because during the day it'll be a pleasant 75, 80 degrees with a little breeze, and you can walk around and enjoy yourself in the sunlight. And so it's going to be our job to inform the uninformed and to let people know. And that's what we're doing here. Somebody asked me what we do. I said, we're kind of like Charlie Kirk for old people, So,
right. Yep.
so but it's our job. And we're hoping, whether it's the SNAP issue, whether it's rooting out the rhinos, whether it's Doge, whether it's the truckers that don't speak English, whether it's the goings-on in Avon Park or other municipalities. And I think we're going to get into what's been happening in Fort Meade. I think Fort Meade is a place that needs some really looking into, and some of the things that have happened there in the recent past. So,
well, we've got a lot going on right here. I mean, within the city of Sebring, we've been part of listening and watching what's developed with the Blackmans, what's also developed with what's also developed with the other location that Monier Rainier has tried to resurrect.
Oh yeah, Kenilworth Lodge.
That thing, I have driven by there a couple times last week, and it looks like everything seems to be stalled. They did the outside, they did the renovation, the landscaping, and all of that to put it back. They did a number of window replacements and so on, but it doesn't appear as though they're, moving. I had hope, and I think he did too when he spoke to us, that they were going to try and have it at least partially open for the upcoming race in March. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether that's going to happen.
He has two things. He has won one lawsuit. The other lawsuit is still pending. Mm-hmm. I talked to him very briefly on the phone about another issue, and he indicated that the interior damage was worse than he thought. Mm-hmm. And as you begin to do things and you begin to uncover stuff, you go, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was here. So he's been doing this kind of, and we're going to get him back again to talk very soon. I'm going to get him on the air. I asked him if he would talk. He says, give me a couple of weeks. So something's going on. Mm-hmm. And I think there may be some resolution of the second lawsuit. And once that's done, I think he feels he can move forward. But we'll see what happens. I haven't been tracking that.
So you've got two major, facilities here in town that are trying to be, with private money, by the way, trying to be resurrected and put back on the taxpayer rolls, as well as opening up places where people can go and stay. And certainly different than a local motel or something like that.
Yes.
And, we talked about it, but I look forward to the day, good Lord willing, that the Harder Hall thing will be resurrected and open for business. I'd like to go there and stay there just to say I've been here and I stayed here.
Yes.
Okay, because of the history that's involved.
We would stay at the Kenilworth. Hopefully, they would have the poolside cabanas opened up, and we'd stay at the Harder Hall, just like you say, just to say we did.
Yeah. And when we were in there, when we went to a couple meetings there before it was closed, there was so much wood in there, and I'm always fascinated with wood and so on. So the floors, 12-inch wide plank floors and so on. So it's just the history behind both of these locations is just monumental, and it will be a really good thing for both the city as well as the public when these two things are hopefully open for business.
And we'll be tracking those things as well. So we're out of time for today, but don't worry, there's more to come. You've been listening to the latest edition of The Barry Foster Show, recorded at the Ridge Flora Studios located in the city of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. Any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions, just put them in the comments below. If you'd like to drop us a line, maybe become a sponsor on the program, send us an email to thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. Check out our YouTube page at The Barry Foster Show daily, as we'll be putting up new programming Monday through Friday, and subscribe to our YouTube page and join our pages, The Barry Foster Show, on Facebook and Instagram. As we continue to look for truth, justice, and the American way, Barry Foster and John Larsen, and we'll see you next time.